In the late 1960s, something big was happening on American roads. Muscle cars were taking over. Young drivers wanted speed, power, and attitude. The Ford Mustang had started the craze in 1964, and it was everywhere. It was cool, affordable, and fast. Ford was winning the pony car war, but Pontiac wasn't going to sit back and watch. They wanted a car that could go head-to-head with the Mustang, and maybe even beat it. So in 1967, Pontiac introduced the Firebird. And just 1 year later, in 1968, they brought out the version that made everyone stop and stare. The Firebird 400 Ho. This wasn't just a car, it was a statement. The Firebird 400 Ho came with a high-output, 400 cubic inch V8 engine. That meant it could roar louder, run faster, and pull harder than most of the competition. It had 335 horsepower on paper, but anyone who drove it knew it felt like more. This car wasn't made for the shy or the slow. It was built for people who wanted to own the street. The design was just as aggressive as the engine. The long, sleek hood, the sharp front end light, the low, wide stance. The twin-scooped hood made it clear. This car had muscle. Chrome accents flashed in the sunlight. It didn't whisper power, it screamed it. But Pontiac didn't stop with just the looks or the engine. They gave the Firebird 400 Ho real performance upgrades. It came with heavy-duty suspension. It had dual exhausts, a 4-barrel carburetor, optional close ratio, 4-speed manual transmission, and you could add a limited slip differential if you wanted better traction during hard acceleration. People who drove it felt something different. The way it launched off the line, the deep growl of the engine, the tight grip around corners. This wasn't a copy of the Mustang, it was a competitor with its own personality, bolder, louder, and just a little bit wild. And buyers loved it. The Firebird 400 Ho quickly gained a reputation. It wasn't as polished as the Mustang, but that was the point. It was raw, real. It had heart. On weekends, you'd find it at drag strips. On weekdays, it turned heads at every stoplight. One young driver, Mike Turner, bought his Firebird 400 Ho straight out of high school. He saved for 2 years, worked weekends, skipped vacations, just to hear that engine roar for the first time. He said, "The first time I hit the gas, it didn't feel like a car. It felt like flying low with a growl under my seat." But as the Firebird 400 Ho climbed in fame, so did the competition. Ford released the Mustang GTI 350. Chevy had the Camaro SS. Dodge rolled out the Challenger. The roads were becoming a battlefield of muscle. But the Firebird had something the others didn't: Pontiac's soul. Behind the wheel, drivers felt confident, even unstoppable. It wasn't just the specs, it was how the car made them feel. Like rebels, like winners. Still, not everything was perfect. Some people thought the Firebird was too heavy. Others said the steering was too stiff. A few critics claimed it was just a Camaro in disguise, since both cars shared the same basic frame. But true fans didn't care. They knew the Firebird 400 Ho had its own identity, and it wasn't afraid of a fight. By the end of 1968, the Firebird had done something no one expected. It had shaken the Mustang. Ford was still the leader, but now there was a real challenger in the rearview mirror, gaining ground fast. Engine howling, headlights locked in. But the real test was still ahead. Would Pontiac double down or fade away? Because what came next would either make the Firebird a legend or just another name lost in the muscle car war. By 1968, the muscle car war was heating up like never before. Pontiac had entered the game with fire. The Firebird 400 Ho was now being seen in drag races, car shows, and high school parking lots across America. But while fans were falling in love, Pontiac still had to prove one thing. Could their car really beat the Mustang? That year, Ford released a new Mustang GT with a powerful 390 engine. It was fast, it was stylish, and it was backed by Ford's massive marketing machine. But the Firebird 400 Ho had something different: grit. On paper, both cars looked close, but on the street, it came down to the driver and the attitude, and the Firebird had plenty of both. Drag strips became battlegrounds. Late at night, engines roared, tires smoked. The Firebird's high-output V8 launched like a rocket. Quarter-mile times shocked people. Mustang drivers started second-guessing themselves. The Firebird wasn't just competing, it was winning. But Pontiac didn't stop there. They wanted to keep pushing. They offered more custom options: a Ram air package, rally gauges, wide track stance. Every piece was made to make the Firebird faster, meaner, and cooler. You could personalize your ride, make it yours, and still leave everyone else behind at the light. And the sound? Oh, the sound. That deep, growling exhaust was music to a car lover's ears. You could hear a Firebird before you even saw it, and when it showed up, people turned to look. It wasn't just about speed anymore. It was about presence. But not everyone liked what Pontiac was doing. Some critics argued the car was too aggressive. Insurance companies hated it. Premiums were high because young drivers were pushing the limits. Accidents happened. Parents worried. But the more dangerous the Firebird seemed, the more teenagers wanted it. Pontiac's gamble was working. Sales climbed. Car magazines began comparing the Firebird and Mustang in serious shootouts. And for the first time, Ford had to admit they weren't alone at the top. Even within General Motors, something interesting was happening. Chevrolet had the Camaro, and now Pontiac had the Firebird, two sister cars from the same parent company, fighting for the same muscle car throne. But Pontiac wasn't copying Chevy. They were crafting a different kind of car, one with more raw muscle and a deeper attitude. The Firebird 400 Ho wasn't clean and polite. It was loud, rough, and powerful. It didn't care about rules. And that's exactly what young drivers wanted in 1968. It became a symbol of rebellion. Some called it the working man's race car. Others called it a Mustang killer. Either way, it had arrived. Even Hollywood took notice. Firebirds began showing up in movies and TV shows. Cool characters drove them. Villains drove them. Action scenes featured smoky burnouts and wild chases. The Firebird wasn't just a car anymore. It was a part of American pop culture. But behind the scenes, pressure was building. The muscle car market was exploding, but so were costs. Gas prices started creeping up. The government began looking at new regulations, emissions, safety, insurance. Automakers worried the golden age wouldn't last. Still, in 1968, the Firebird 400 Ho stood tall. It had earned its place on the list of true muscle cars. It was no longer in the Mustang's shadow. It was running right beside it, sometimes even ahead. And the fans, they knew it. Firebird owners started forming clubs. They showed up at meets in matching jackets, proud of their choice. They traded tips on tuning, racing, and restoring. They weren't just driving cars. They were part of a movement. But the road ahead wouldn't stay smooth. The years that followed would test every muscle car. Gas shortages, government crackdowns, and rising insurance costs were just around the corner. Would the Firebird survive the storm? Or would it become just another memory from a time when power ruled the road? By the end of the 1960s, the Pontiac Firebird 400 Ho had done what few thought possible. It stood toe-to-toe with the Mustang, fought through the toughest competition in the muscle car world, and earned respect on the streets. But no matter how fast or fierce it was, a bigger battle was coming, one that no engine could outrun. In the early 1970s, everything started to change. Gas prices soared. New emissions laws hit hard. Insurance companies cracked down on high-performance cars. Suddenly, the muscle car dream felt like it was slipping away. Pontiac tried to adapt. They made changes to the Firebird line, adjusted the engines, and focused more on comfort and style. But it wasn't the same. The pure, raw energy of the 1968 Firebird 400 Ho couldn't be replaced. By 1972, the high-output option was gone. Fans were heartbroken. They had seen their hero rise, and now they were watching it fade. But the story didn't end there. Even as the Firebird changed over the years, the legend of the 1968 400 Ho only grew stronger. Car lovers began collecting them, restoring them, racing them at vintage events. It became a rare gem, a car that had lived through the golden era of American horsepower. Collectors started searching for them across the country. Barn finds became treasure hunts. People spent years looking for original models with matching numbers and original parts. When one showed up at an auction, the crowd held its breath. Prices soared. The Firebird 400 Ho wasn't just a car anymore. It was a piece of history, but it wasn't just the value that made it special. It was the feeling. Anyone who had driven a 400 Ho remembered the sound of the engine, the pull of the acceleration, the way the car made you feel like you ruled the road. It wasn't just transportation. It was an experience. Raw, powerful, unforgettable. Even today, the Firebird's legacy lives on in car culture. At classic car shows, you'll still find them lined up next to the Mustangs, Camaros, and Challengers. And even now, 50 years later, people still argue which was better. Was the Mustang the king? Or did the Firebird have more soul? Ask a Firebird owner, and they'll tell you with pride, my car didn't just look fast, it lived fast. Some younger drivers are even discovering it for the first time. They scroll through old videos, watch footage from drag races, or see one parked at a local car meet. And when they hear that engine rumble, something lights up. That same excitement from 1968 comes back, like a spark refusing to die. The 1968 Firebird 400 Ho may have started as Pontiac's answer to the Mustang, but it became something more. It was a rebel with four wheels, a machine with muscle and meaning. It wasn't just about numbers or sales. It was about standing out, being bold, owning the road with power and pride. And in a time when cars are getting quieter, cleaner, and smarter. The Firebird reminds us of a wilder era, when driving was about feeling something, when muscle meant thunder under your feet and the wind in your face. So the next time you hear that low rumble behind you and you catch a glimpse of that sharp chrome-sparked hood in your rearview mirror, don't be surprised. It might just be the Firebird, still flying, still fighting, still challenging the Mustang. Even after all these years,